And we're back, and we just finished watching 2017's Blade of the Immortal, the 100th film in Takeshi Miike's long and pretty expansive career. It tells the story of Manju,
I thought it was Manji.
Manji? Is it Manji? I thought it was Manju.
Manji, wasn't it?
Maybe you're right. I don't know. I thought he said Manju. Maybe I'm wrong.
No,
Manji.
I'm pretty sure it's Manji. Manji or Manji.
A samurai from a bygone era who's...
I think he was a samurai, but he sort of got like tricked by the person he served to kill another man, and turns out that the guy he killed wasn't a bad guy, so he killed his master, and then because he killed his master, he had to kill a whole bunch of other guys, and one of them was his brother-in-law, which drove his sister insane. Which made him, instead of killing himself after all this crazy murder and dishonor, he ended up going to protect his sister who lost her mind. Right. And he had a bounty on his head, and then a bounty hunter and like 100 other dudes like capture the girl, surround him, kill his sister, and then he goes berserk and he kills everybody.
It was pretty glorious. That opening sequence was really amazing.
I would probably say the opening sequence there is my favorite part of this movie. And like just like the way it was filmed and the aftermath of it, where
the overhead
he uses that whole screen to show like
just
the left side of the screen. He's all the way on the right side of the screen, just barely standing, and then there's just like a river of dead bodies behind him.
This film is beautiful to look at. I mean, I think it's sharp, it's crisp. The costuming is very true to that time frame.
I thought, they do a great job with costumes and
nothing is it felt very authentic in that like nobody's polished. I mean, Manji is like covered in grime. Nobody comes across as like this ethereal, beautiful, clean thing, right? It felt very like even when Rin like gets hurt and she's got like blood on her face and whatnot. Nothing is like polished.
Maybe Maki, the girl with the spear. She doesn't really get dirty too often. Until the very end.
But I mean, she like no one could touch her. I mean, she was an amazing fighter, right? Pick your fighter.
Killing machine there.
Yeah.
And also Anatsu, he was very pristine
up until
pristine all the way up until the end.
Yeah. I'll get your impressions. What else did you think about this film?
I thought it was just all right. I gotta be honest. Parts of it felt like they edited it. Like I expected it to be just like there was plenty of blood.
Lots
of blood, but I feel like a lot of stuff may have been edited so that you didn't see too much gore. For a film based almost entirely on sword fighting, there wasn't many like heads or even arms and legs flying off. There was some dismemberments, but it wasn't egregious.
It wasn't egregious, yeah.
Which I would have expected. If you're swinging a sword like a maniac through a field of 100 men,
yes,
I really felt like more heads should be flying.
Right, he should have been covered in
people getting bisected and trisected and.
Yes, agreed. I mean, in that first sequence, as good as it was, he should have been covered in like
head to toe
in blood and gore. Yeah.
But that's not something to really mark against it.
No.
I just felt like it, to me, at least this version we saw. Maybe there's like a Japanese version. This was like maybe an Americanized version.
It was more sanitized.
It was like released by Warner Brothers. So.
Yeah. Well, that was interesting at the beginning, right?
Yeah. So they probably were like, okay, you got to cut out this, and this. But also on top of that, this was based on a manga, and mangas, let's just say that they really like throwing in a lot of characters.
Sure.
And in order to tell what the character, like to let you know who the characters are, they go into, it's like, okay, we're gonna fight, and then suddenly it's like flashback where you learn about this guy and whatnot. And I feel like maybe since they couldn't do that in this sort of media and film, because this film was already long. It was 2 hours and some odd minutes.
Right.
Adding any of that backstory in for these characters would have been just egregious. Nobody would have probably sat through it. You would have needed to make this like a television show.
2 hours and 20 minutes. It's 140 minutes long.
Yet they still kept some of these characters where you're just like, well, what the hell's so special about this guy? Why is this guy acting this way in this one scene and now he's acting this way in another? I found this especially weird in the scene where Rin's family, or mother and father, or her father is killed, her mother is used for, in quotes, sport, which basically means she was raped, and they take the girl out of the room, and one of the bad guys, I guess, sort of covers her with his cloak and says, close your eyes and cover your ears, because this will scar you for life. Yeah. Which makes it seem like, maybe this guy's got a heart in him. He was a lot of good character design. He was wearing some sort of weird samurai mask, and he had these strange haunches on his shoulders and whatnot. And then the next time you see him, he's like a weirdo stalker perv.
Yeah.
And it was just sort of like, all right, now you're a weird stalker perv. You're no longer a guy who cares. You're a weird stalker perv. And that was very jarring to me. And then the next guy is like Sonic the Hedgehog. He looks like Sonic the Hedgehog. He doesn't have his powers.
He moved around like him too.
He moved around pretty quick, but but suddenly he's there, and we find out his name, and he's got like a little bit of a talking part, and then he gets hurt, and you never see him again, or you see him again, he says something.
Exposition.
He becomes an exposition boy, and then he disappears.
Yeah. And
there's like a lot of other characters that are part of this, what was it, the Ito Ryo, the evil school that was trying to take over all the other schools. Mm-hmm. And they had like all these like unique characters, and like Maki and whatnot, and they're just sort of like thrown out there. We don't know really who they are. We don't know why they act the way they do. Maki was another freaking completely bizarre turn. She's just kicking ass, and then suddenly she's like, "Oh, I realize I don't like killing." It's like, what? Yeah. What the hell are you talking about? And was she in a relationship with Amatsu, or I don't know
that was never explained. Although she was super loyal to him.
She was super loyal to him, unexplainably loyal to him. It had that problem. I mean, even in manga, when you get the backstories, it's still. I'm sure I'll get hate for saying anything bad about manga in general, but characters are usually horribly developed. Yeah. They're usually more like, oh, I'm a attitude. Look at me, I got flaming hair. Yeah. I wear big beads around my neck because I'm a tough guy. And that's basically the sum total of their character. And
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. With this movie, I let you go on for a long time. Don't even.
You did, but you used your catchphrase.
I'm sorry. Listen, so I totally get what you're saying. Some of it I agree with, some of it I don't. Do you think one of my only notes here was that it felt like there were too many characters? Like maybe
that's the problem. Right. I think. So
would that have helped if they had just concentrated on one heavy instead of because it felt like there was a lot of. It felt like there was a lot of layers. I don't know if it wasn't needed. I feel like the people that sort of betray I'm really bad with the pronunciation. Anatsu,
the main bad guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Anatsu.
You kind of needed them in a way, right? Because it had this I'm sure Anatsu in his own mind felt like he was going to be the savior, that he was uniting all the schools, but obviously he took it too far, right? And people were like, okay, well, we can't have this guy come in and lead like the samurais. So we have to put a stop to his reign of terror, right? And he wasn't a nice guy, right? I mean, he comes and he kills Rin's dad.
And then he allows all his men to rape her mother.
The mother, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that he was like, "Don't touch the girl," was sort of admirable, but he's still kind of like a piece of shit. Yeah. So would this have benefited from like a more streamlined, I guess, instead of having so many characters, if they had maybe like condensed it and focused more on developing those characters?
They definitely could have. In my mind, they definitely could have simplified the story. There was just way too many characters.
Like Shira?
Yeah, like that was another thing, that the remainders of all the rival schools, or allegedly the rival schools, like they were there. They really didn't have much. You thought they had like a proper motivation, but then it was just like whatever. And then there was the other two that were just. They were just basically background throwaway characters, and like the girl on that thing, she wasn't even in the big scene, the big banquet scene, was it? I only saw the guy. I only saw the guy with the sunglasses.
Right.
And
the older guy.
And once again, it's like these guys they look like they're designed to be primary characters. They're not like background wearing rags or something like a lot of these dudes were. Mm-hmm. But you'd think, okay, well, this guy, he seems like he's somebody we should pay attention to.
The story, yeah.
Yeah, but no, they just weren't. It was just like...
What did you think of Manji?
I thought he honestly, the way it began, it seemed interesting. He then gets cursed with immortality, I guess. That's another thing. I honestly don't know why. Mm-hmm. But he does, by this weird witch that lives in the woods. And I don't know why this witch is like trying to prove something to Manji or something. It's just like, I'm going to pick this guy. Mm-hmm. But then as it goes on, he's clearly, there's the whole thing, oh, she looks just like my sister, mm-hmm. so I'm going to be her bodyguard. And I don't know. Another thing was he didn't really seem like, if he wasn't immortal, he wouldn't have really been that great of a fighter.
Yeah, he kind of dropped the ball. Like, in the beginning, he was a way better swordsman than he was.
He's a normal guy, and he slaughters like 100 people. I mean,
he gets 5 minutes.
He gets really messed up. He gets his hand cut off. He's like, he loses an eye. His face is slashed open.
All right.
But then later on, he's fighting one-on-one with these random... other characters, and they're practically killing him, and the only reason why he survives is because he just immortal. Can't die.
Yeah.
And that sort of was like a little weird. Also, I mean, I guess we're talking about a guy who's kept immortal by bloodworms and stuff like that, so you got to toss your disbelief out the window. But it was also weird. He would just like flick his wrists, and suddenly he had like at least 100 pounds of like swords
just coming out of his
sleeve.
Yeah.
Like he kept the sword of like everyone he killed.
And it felt that way.
And he just like dumps them on the ground like every single time, and suddenly he's fighting with these swords.
Yeah, I kind of agree with what you're saying. There was a lot of I don't know if they're plot holes, but just like really inconsistencies in the story. Like the other guy that was the immortal, he's like, come join me, and we'll kill this guy, and then all of a sudden he just wants to get killed by Manji, and he's like, I'm just tired of living.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but wait a minute, you came all like gangster, like we're gonna get this done, to the point where like I even threw poison in you to kind of take you down a notch, and then he still just like punks out.
And if he really wanted to die, he had the poison.
Right. He could have just killed himself.
He could have just killed himself. Yeah, there was just so many like weird.
Do you think that's what's the word I'm looking for? Oh my god, it's in the top of my head and I can't. I'm tired today. I can't spit it out. Do you think that has to do because this is based on a property that's not, I guess, Western?
No, I honestly, I think that the manga was probably like many chapters, and they just crammed it all into a 2-hour movie. And normally when you're doing something like that, if you have this huge bulk of source material, either they break it up into a bunch of movies, they break it up into a TV show, or they cut a lot of that shit out. And
which is probably what they did here.
They did cut a lot of shit out, but they didn't cut it out in a very smart way. It was almost like, well, we got to have this guy in it. He's so cool. We got to have this guy in it. He's so cool. And all right, you put those characters in it, but if you don't put the backstory in with the character, then it's just sort of like all frosting and no cake. You shouldn't have done that. If you can't do it right, don't do it. It should have been Manji, Rin, Anatsu, and maybe one or two henchmen, and then a thousand nameless guys who just are cannon fodder.
Sure.
And that should have been it.
Yeah.
But then you have the subplot with the other immortal guy. You have the subplot with the heads of the other schools who turn out to, well, some of them aren't really heads of the schools, and some of them are just bounty hunters and weirdos. And then you have the subplot with the shogun, or the whoever that guy was that said, okay, the shogun wants you to be the head of all the schools.
Right.
And I'm going to go to this mountain because this guy wants to pledge fealty to me, and then we're going to have a banquet. And then it was just, there was so way too much. And then at the very end, the whole thing is like, oh, I want revenge.
But then she's
like defending him, and it's just like,
and it's like,
he killed your
father
dad
in front of you.
He mutilated your father in front of you,
and allowed
your mother to get gang raped.
Yeah,
and it was just like,
that was weird. And even like Manju calls her out on it. Manji, sorry, I keep saying Manju. Why do I keep?
And then like I gotta find my mom, and then she's just a head on that guy's shoulder.
Yeah.
And like, what was going on there? Was this guy magical in some way?
I don't know. That's what I mean. Is it like?
Did somebody?
Is it like a cultural thing that we just don't understand? I'm sure there's certain things.
I bet that the guy with the head, the shoulder humps. That's what I'm
Let's call him Shoulder Humps.
Shoulder Humps. I bet in the manga, Shoulder Humps had a big story, a backstory about what the hell he was, why his face looked the way it did.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Why he had shoulder humps. I mean, he was so proud of the fact that he could dislocate his shoulders and fight people backwards.
Yeah.
And that was sort of like a little one-off. It was like me saying, I have a curly hair in my nose. It was this bit of trivia.
Well, this is. I mean, it's a good movie. It's not a great movie. It's not a bad movie. To me, like, if I was gonna rate this, I'd give it maybe like a 6.5.
I think I would probably give it a 4.
Really? So low?
I think it was below average.
I don't know. I disagree. I mean, I thought it was fun. I thought the action sequences were really well done. I thought the sets and the costuming was really fantastic. The editing was really good. Just thinking about other movies of his, like one of the first movies that we ever saw from him was The Audition, which is
Audition is creepy as hell.
Bananas. Yeah, I mean,
that was like a much more manageable story.
Right.
I saw it
years and years ago,
over a decade ago, but it was a way more manageable story. This had just way too much going on.
We probably saw that movie like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't want to say 20 years, but
but it's true.
But but this was like more sprawling, and the reason why it did have nice costumes and backgrounds and whatnot, but the story was just way too convoluted and not streamlined at all. The performances were okay. They were just okay. I gotta be honest. Manji was not really that interesting. Probably The only one who I thought was like who played his part well was probably Anatsu.
Yeah.
He played his part well. He just seemed like this guy who was like focused on this weird goal of his.
Yeah.
And he was like the guy that you're looking at and you're like, oh, that guy's he's gonna do something cool. But then
he's also like a foot taller than
everybody else. He's very maintained.
Yes.
He kills her dad in one stroke.
Yes.
And it's not even like a little puncture wound. He cuts him practically in half.
Yeah. It was brutal. I was like, whoa.
But even that, and that was another thing. The fights, they weren't really that great. The fight choreography wasn't that good. It was a lot of swinging and hundreds of people who like waiting their turn to die. Like maybe 3 guys would come out, they'd all die, swing, dead, and then like you'd see the rest of them just standing behind, holding their swords, ready for their. Okay, now you guys go. And even the big boss characters, which there were too many, the fight with shoulder humps and Sonic the Hedgehog weren't really that impressive. Even the other Immortal guy, the fight wasn't that impressive.
No, it wasn't. Yeah. No, you're right.
Probably the only fight that seemed kind of cool was the fight against Maki.
Yes.
She was like you could see they sort of like made this whole set piece for that fight, and that fight had some dynamic elements to it. Mm-hmm. Mainly because she was very acrobatic and whatnot. She had that crazy weapon.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
But even then, it was just sort of it didn't have that snappiness that you'd get from like say the Raid or even like we can't compare a lot to the Raid, but even like
we've been spoiled. Gareth
like Winter Soldier, the fight choreography in the Winter Soldier, amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
Or even just general kung fu movie. It was just. It let me down a bit. Mm-hmm. Lots of blood. I'm always appreciative of lots of blood, but if you're dealing with a guy who has literally 100 pounds of swords hidden in his sleeves, I expect to see disembowelments, arms flying off, heads flying off.
Yeah.
The shot of the guy turning around with a geyser of blood spraying out of his neck, especially when it's based upon a manga, and
you know that it's a horrible violent manga.
And I'm just.
Do you think they toned it down for like U.S. release?
I do get because there were some awkward cuts and awkward angles in the way things were done, and I feel like that probably other things were going on there that we weren't seeing.
Yeah. I'd be curious to know if there's like a Japanese cut as opposed to what we just saw.
Maybe, I don't know, but yeah, that kind of let me down, and it's like I said, the story was just way too convoluted. I couldn't get behind that, so it's below. I have to mark this as something that's below average. That's why I'd give it a 4.
Fair enough. I
didn't hate it.
Yeah.
I just didn't think it was a good movie. I thought it was. It wasn't good.
I don't know. I think it was a little bit better than that. Again, a lot of the other elements. I agree with you. For a main character, he wasn't as compelling. I don't know what happened. I mean, I feel like the opening sequence was really impactful.
Yeah, great start.
Then it sort of just meandered and it took a long time to get where it needed to go. I agree with you. There was too many characters. Maybe if they had streamlined that a little bit, maybe it would have been better for the story. Because again, like you were saying, absolutely agree. Like a lot of these characters are introduced, and it's like, for what reason? Like that other Immortal guy, no reason to have him in the story. Shira, no reason to have him in the story. Yeah. The other 2 people from the schools, no reason to have them in the story.
Yeah, I mean, they just sort of appear and then they're like, okay, you're going to go off with Shira and we're going to go on this other road. And you never you don't see what happens to them. Yeah. Were they ambushed too? I don't know.
Magic Hump guy could have been interesting. I mean, there was the potential there. There was a lot of interesting elements, but just it didn't go anywhere. They sort of bitched him out, maybe. I don't know. I expected that fight sequence to be a little bit more exciting, but it wasn't.
No, he basically was just he got stabbed.
Yeah.
It wasn't even like he got cleaved in half, or maybe they did cleave him in half. We just didn't see it because it was cut weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, bottom line, he just got stabbed.
Yeah, and I didn't. By the time that scene happened towards the end with Rin, I was like, I don't like you now. What happened?
Yeah,
I was like, I was rooting for you, but then
just stupid.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, I'll train you.
And no training ever happens. Was she ever
really trained?
Yeah, because
she had one move with the throwing knives, and she fucked that up too.
All the time, all the time. And she's standing there with the sword.
The only person she hit with the damn knife was him.
Oh my god! And then she got her father's blade back, but she didn't really do anything.
She didn't even use it to try and kill what's his name.
Yeah.
Like that would have been somewhat poetic,
right? Because he murdered her family.
Did she just drop it in the mud or something? Because suddenly she just didn't have it anymore.
I don't know. And then there was like that weird. There was that weird thing where she left him the note.
Yeah, what the hell was that?
And I was like, so is she in love with him now? And she has to. I can't be here. I have to go away now because it hurts
She didn't want him to die for her, but he's freaking immortal.
Right? Yeah. I mean, I feel like I thought The Witch was interesting.
Completely undeveloped.
Completely undeveloped, but I thought she was interesting, and if they had maybe done more with that, I thought the main character, they did him a disservice. I don't know if it was maybe the screenplay or maybe the actor, I can't really tell, but I think there was something to be said for that character's story arc. I think that, again, I agree with you, probably my favorite scene is the beginning of this film. The opening sequence of this film.
It all goes downhill from there for me.
And it's interesting because the witch basically says to him, like, it's always easier when somebody else makes those choices for us.
Yeah.
Right? And that was interesting because that then led to a sequence, and then you come 50 years later, and then he meets Ren. And I could see why he needed that, maybe because he felt like he failed his sister in some way.
Yeah, I mean, that was basically it.
Yeah.
He was in his,
he was trying
I guess it was his chance to protect this girl like he should have protected his sister.
Right.
And that's why he says, I'm not going to die before you do.
Right. And that could have been a very good story. I mean, we've had this conversation about, like, the Japanese version of The Ring and the American version of The Ring. And I'm sure this is going to be a controversial statement, but I'm going to also make this. The American version was way better only because of the character development.
Yeah.
The Japanese film is fine, but the American version of that movie is way better because of the character development. You understand why these things are happening. You have some sense of these characters. They're not just throwaway. They're not just screen fodder. They're not just exposition. In the American version of The Ring, you get a real sense of who Samara is, the Naomi Watts character, her son, the guy in Torque. Get a real sense for all of these characters and how they interplay and how they get swept up in this crazy story.
Yeah.
Here, there's interesting elements, but they're all over the place.
Just thrown out there.
Yeah, and you're right. It should have been streamlined more. I guess I'm feeling a little bit more forgiving. I would give it I would give it like a 6.5. But yeah, this film could have used just a little bit of tweaking, and just maybe different writing to get it to be more impactful instead of just, because I'm going to out myself and say that there were points where my eyelids got very heavy. And I may have missed.
And you're the one who's actually given this a positive rating.
I know, it's crazy. Maybe I should take it down a notch too, because I didn't see this film 100%. I saw about 93% of it.
It wasn't a good movie. I mean, like I said, it had a strong start, but it just wasn't good. Story is so important.
You know what? It is. But my thing now is, I guess I'm comparing this to other movies, and in my mind, like, would I watch this again before I watched, I don't know, Birdemic or Wonder Woman 84?
That's not a good way to judge things. I would watch this more than I'd watch a piece of crap. I would watch this again as opposed to Birdemic, but that has nothing to do with anything. I'm judging this film based upon what I saw now, not based upon anything else. If that's like saying, oh well, I'm basing this because I love The Raid so much, and this isn't anywhere near that. It isn't anywhere near. The Raid is brilliant. But I'm not thinking about The Raid. I'm just thinking that this film, the writing, the story was just a mess. The choice of adding so many stupid characters that looked like they should have been more meaningful and more impactful to the story, and just like tossing them aside, it was just like, why did you do that? I want to know about shoulder humps. I want to know about Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah.
But you don't have enough time to tell me about all these characters, so don't even show them to me.
Right.
You know, or show me one, give him an actual character and then because a lot of films, a lot of action movies, they have like that kind of story where there's like the big bad guy and then he has like his prime henchman.
Right.
And you get a little bit of flavor of what the prime henchman is like, and it's enough to keep you happy, so this way you're like, oh man, that guy's so cool, or oh man, I can't wait to see that guy die.
Yeah.
And they could have done that with this, because they did have these characters, but it was just like, what the hell are you doing with them? Yeah. I mean, and then when you do get little bits of these characters' personalities or lives, like with Maki, it's just like out of the blue weirdness. Like, I come to the realization that I don't like this.
Yeah. But then she comes with a big fight at the end. Good at it. But then she comes with a big fight at the end.
Yeah, she comes with the big fight at the end, and she's like, she doesn't like what this guy's making her do, but I'm just going to jump in front of a hail of gunfire for him.
Yeah, and where did the guns come from all of a sudden? Like, they weren't there for the other parts of the movie.
The guns were around back then, but they were rare. They were rare.
Yeah, because they had to do the whole British line thing.
Yeah,
where,
like single shot
deals, right?
But even still, it was... that old dude shows up and he's just like, he's just not back. He's like watching this whole thing, eating rice balls, and suddenly he's just like, all right, time to fight. And like, he put up a decent fight, better than like all these young dudes who are like just being sliced to ribbons. And like Anatsu's already, he's got like a couple of cuts on his now pristine outfit is now tinged with a little red, and he still just cleaves that guy in half. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm gonna give this a 4.
All right, fair enough. For
all the reasons stated.
Well, I still thought it was somewhat entertaining and interesting, and yeah, I liked it. I guess I liked it more than you.
I mean, I could see maybe a fan of the manga watching it and being like, oh yeah, that I know what this guy's backstory is, so it doesn't bother me so much that he's just there for maybe 5 minutes of screen time before he's just stabbed.
Yeah, horribly mutilated.
Yeah. That's the thing, he wasn't even horribly mutilated. Yeah, that's true. It's just, oh, I've been stabbed. And like, Sonic the Hedgehog.
The old guy gets cut in half. You see like that guy in that South Park episode.
Well, where were the guts?
Yes.
Where were the guts?
Yes, it was a little too clean.
It was just so pristine, you know?
Yes.
And it was just like...
Yes, he should have been bleeding out. Like, yes. Yeah. He should have looked like a flat pillowcase.
That's one of the things that was missing. Geysers of blood.
Yes. Like, that would have made it more...
This is something that required geysers of blood.
Yes. It's the blade of the immortal.
It's the blade of the immortal.
Yeah, so there should have been,
If you're going to have a scene where there's like 1,000 people and they're all attacking one person with a sword, it should have been like that scene in Kill Bill.
Yes.
Where the bride is just cutting off arms and legs and heads.
In blood.
And there are geysers of blood.
Yeah.
That's what it should have been.
And she's filthy and covered in blood. Yeah.
That's what it should have been. And this was more like, this sort of felt like a throwback to like the old samurai movies.
Yeah.
Like Ichi the Blind Swordsman and things like that, where they're just whirling in a circle and the other guys just go, ah! And they throw up their arms and they're dead.
Dead. I agree with you. But I still liked it enough to give it more of a rating.
You think it's above average?
I think so. I mean, not far above average.
I feel it's below average.
I don't know if I agree with that.
There was just too much weakness.
Between a 6 and a 6.5, I think.
Yeah,
I think other things in the movie make up for the negatives in it.
I don't see that. I really don't see what would make up for the bad storytelling and lack of character development and uninteresting performances and lack of blood and gore and lack of decent fight choreography.
It was fine. It wasn't like...
It was swinging and there was very few actual fight scenes where you were just like, wow, these guys are really working hard. Mm-hmm. I don't think there were any real fight scenes where they were like, okay, you're gonna strike at here, 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 and it's gonna look really cool because it's gonna be fast, and you're gonna practice doing it 100 times until you get it right. There was nothing like that. It was just, I want you to spin around and just wave your arms and raise your arms up like you're an air traffic controller.
That's exactly what it looked like.
That's exactly what it looked like. And you 3 guys are gonna throw up your arms and scream, and you 16 guys are just gonna stand around in a circle, waiting. And then I'm gonna tell you, Bob, it's your turn.
You really think there's a Bob there?
Bob, Kyle, and
Jonathan.
Everybody named Jonathan attack.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know. I just looked on his IMDb page. Edition came out in 1999. We're old.
Where's my Metamucil woman?
And that's a movie that we saw from the Blockbuster, because that was the time that we were going.
Blockbuster. That shows how old we are.
Yes, exactly. That's a movie that we rented.
Yeah.
Was it a VHS copy?
No, I don't think it's that old.
Or was it DVD?
I think we had moved on to the DVDs.
To the DVD players? Okay, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure where we were in 99.
VHS tapes.
Well, actually, 99 was even before I met you.
Yeah.
So we saw this probably closer to like 2003.
Yeah.
But still, I thought that was a crazy movie. And it's funny because it's probably going on 20 years that we've seen it, and it's still like I still see scenes of that movie in my head, and I'm like, what?
That was a good one. It had a lot of. It had just the right amount of weirdness. It had a manageable cast.
Yeah.
All the characters were developed. This was like...
It was too much going on, I guess.
Like, what's up with you, shoulder humps? Why are you acting weird now? You seem like a nice dude.
Guy before, yeah.
And it was also kind of strange. It was just sort of like, I want you to come help me get revenge. And he's like, it's late. I'll help you get home. Maybe I'll find somebody to practice on my swordsmanship with.
Right.
And then suddenly it's like there's a trap for shoulder humps.
Yes.
It was just like she's walking by herself suddenly, and shoulder humps comes out, and is just like, I'm gonna.
Yeah, they had that whole exchange. Like, where the hell was he?
Yeah, he's like standing in the background,
waiting to be cued in,
waiting for shoulder humps to do his monologue, and then. All right, I'm done. The more I think about this, the more it aggravates me. And
all right. We're
Blade of the Immortal, you're getting away with a 4, but if I keep talking about it, it's going to go down. So let's pull the plug on this one.
All right, that's it from us, and we'll come back with another review soon. Good night.
Good night.